Uh, Thank you everyone for joining this crash course. This crash course is called the Power of Options. And for this crash course, as I mentioned the last time, it will be split into two parts. The first part is actually on the options basics, which is today. And the second part, I will talk about it at the end of the session. Okay, so okay. So first thing first, before I jump into anything, disclaimer, this is for educational purpose only, and it's not a recommendation to buy or sell anything. And please do your own due diligence before making your own decisions. And for this session, I hope that you can take away these few points. The first one is understanding of what is options, learning the basics of options contracts, learn the value of options, and learn how options can accelerate your returns with controlled risk. So the speaker of today is myself. I'm Zipei, if you do not know me. And this my Instagram account, The Journey to 1 Mil. I'm born in Malaysia, graduated from NTU, Singapore. And currently I'm a project application engineer in automation machines industry. I started trading stocks and options in last year, about April time. And then now managing a diversified portfolio. And also last month, I just opened a new website, and I will be uploading some posts, some thoughts, as well as all these crash course content will be on there. So if you want to look into some new posts, you can just visit to this website. And yeah, you can learn something, and you can comment on the post as well. So as I say, this is how the new website look like. You can check it out, and here I will be updating the posts. And as you can see, I have two new posts. One is on the Alibaba crash. The other one is regarding the Bitcoin. So you guys can go ahead and take a look if you want to. Okay, so let's start with the options basics. So there's a saying, it is the basics, the bread and butter of options that will propel you forward. So what this means is basically you need to understand the basic of the options before you can master all sorts of advanced techniques and stuff like that. Because it's actually the basics that will propel you, improve you, and upgrade you forward. And after knowing the basics only, you can start to learn all those advanced things. Yeah. So introduction. So here, what is options? As many of you may not know, options is actually a contract, a written contract that consists of the buying and selling of 100 shares. So what this means is that each contract, it will contain 100 shares of value. So basically, in every time you trade an options contract, it will be in a value of 100 shares. So for the basic components of options contract, so this is a screenshot from TD America actually. It's a screenshot of options trading. So at the side here, the first side, you will see buy or sell. So this indicates of the buying or selling of the options contract itself. And then the next is the quantity, which is how much number of contracts that you are trading. The third column is the symbol, which shows what stock and or ETF counters that you are trading. The next column is on the expiry date. Normally we use the short form DTE, date to expiry. So it actually shows when does this contract expires. So later on, I'll be covering on all these individual components and make sure that you understand what they mean. So after the date of expiry, the next one is strike. We normally use a short form of SP, strike price. Currently, in this example, the strike price is 430. It's actually talking about the price of the underlying stock or ETF counter that it is talking about. So the next column is actually the type. There are two types of options. It's either call or put. So later I will be touching on this as well. And the last column is actually the price of the options. So in this example is 64.5. It means that it is a price per contract per share. So basically, just now I mentioned that one contract actually consists of 100 shares. So what you need to do is that this 64.5, you need to multiply by 100, which is 6,450 per contract. So that's the price of one contract of these options. So in short, how I will put it is normally is under here, which is 10 contracts of the date of expiry 21 January 2022, a buy call for Apple at the strike price of 430 at 64.5 per contract per share. So yeah, everyone understand these slides, or do I need to explain further? You can type in the chat box 1 if you understand, and 2 if you do not understand anything. Okay, 1. Okay. So all understand? I will jump to the next slide. So this is an overview of what options contracts are. So as I mentioned, options contract can be differentiated into call and put. And the left side, I have put the buyer and the seller. So basically, if you are talking about buying a call option, oh, sorry, I jumped the next. Okay. So basically, if you are talking about buying a call options, the buyer, it means that the buyer has the right to buy the stocks at the strike price that he buy. So, and the buyer has to pay premium upfront for the options contract. And actually, by buying a call, the buyer actually intend the price of the stocks to go up in order to have a profit. So actually, call and put is the other way around. It's opposite. So if you are buying a put, the buyer has the right to sell the stock at the strike price it states. And the buyer, but the similar thing is the buyer always need to pay the premium to buy the contract. And a buyer of a put is actually intending the price of the stock to go down in the foreseeing future in order for him to be profitable. So next is the seller. So a seller of a call option, he has the obligation to sell the stock, and the seller always collects premium by selling the options contract. And a sell call is actually intending for the price to go down. As for the sell put, it's also the opposite of the call. the seller has the obligation to buy the stock at the strike price. And the seller the seller always collects the premium. And for the sell put, the seller actually intend the price to go up to be profitable. So this one is actually talking about what the buyer and the seller require to buy call or buy put, or sell call or sell put. So for the buy call, the buyer need to have cash to pay premium only. So as I mentioned, the buyer has the right to buy the stock in the end, but he does not need to buy the underlying stock if he do not want to, if he choose not to. So it just gives the buyer the right to buy. So that's why the buyer of the buy call options, they only need to pay cash for the premium only. And for the stock price, it must go up to be profitable. If the stock goes sideways or go down, the buy call will actually not be profitable. And what is the characteristic is that the buyer of the call options has unlimited profits but limited loss. So the profits unlimited because the stock price can go unlimited up. So that's why it's unlimited. As for the losses, the buyer of the call options is limited because the maximum they can lose is the whole premium they pay. There's no other losses that they can incur. So next, I will talk about the buyer of the put option. The buyer of the put options actually need cash. Also, same thing, they need cash to pay premium only, and they have no obligation to sell the stock, but they have the right. So for the buyer of the put, it's actually the stock price must go down in order to be profitable. If the stock price is going sideways or go up, the buyer of the put contract will actually lose money. And for a buy put, the profits is actually limited because the stock price can only go down to zero. It cannot go to negative. So this is the limit of the buy put. And similar to the buy call, the buy put limited loss is also only the premium. You cannot lose more than that. So this one, everyone is clear? Okay, if it's clear, I will move on to the seller part. So the seller of the call, if you want to sell a call, it is most advisable to have 100 shares with you. Why 100 shares? Because one contract it contains the buying and selling of 100 shares. So actually, if you have 100 shares of, let's say, Apple, then you can consider to sell a call to collect some premiums. But what the seller of the call intend to have is the stock price is staying below the strike price to be able to be profitable. If the stock price is above the strike price, then the seller of the call options will actually lose money. And similarly for the sell put, the seller actually, they need to have cash in hand to be able to buy 100 shares of the counter. So what this means is that because the seller is actually have an obligation to buy the shares if the strike price is if the stock price is lower than the strike price. So what this seller of the put how he is profitable is that the stock price need to stay above the strike price to be profitable. If not, then the seller has to use all his cash to buy the 100 shares. So is everyone clear of this overview, buying and selling? Okay. I see one question, premiums equals to cash to pay and collect. Yes. So actually, for options contract, the is actually the value of the options contract is actually sometimes called premiums, and it is the value of the contract itself. So if someone is to say they are buying an options contract, they are actually paying the premiums to buy. And if someone is say they're selling the options contract, they are actually collecting premiums by selling the contract. So I need to pay when I buy something and get paid when I sell something. Yes, correct. So if you are a buyer of either a call or put options, you need to pay the premium upfront. And as for the seller of either the call or put options, you need to sell. You will collect the premiums upfront. Yeah. So upfront means that once it is executed, the seller will actually get the premiums right away. Yeah, that's the thing. So I'll go to the next section. Okay. The next section is on the call options. So the definition, as I mentioned earlier in the overview, buy call is actually having the rights to buy the stock at a particular strike price by expiry. So what this means is that if let's say the Apple stock today is actually $100, let's say example. So $100 of Apple stock, but you do not want to buy 100 shares now because you do not have the capital, but you foresee that maybe in 1 year's time you will have some money to buy the Apple 100 shares. But by that time, Apple shares may have rise to about 130. So in the end, you will need more cash to buy 100 shares of Apple uh, after the 1 year. So basically, what buying a call means that you can actually pay a premium, a deposit, to lock in the price, strike price of the stock that you want, so that by the expiry date, let's say the 1 year, after 1 year, you can still buy the Apple shares, 100 of Apple shares at the 100 strike price that you want. So that's the meaning of buy call options. So for selling call is the opposite. The sell call is actually a promise to sell the stock at a particular strike price by expiry. So these two are very different. The first one, the buying, is actually having a right, but they do not need to buy uh, the stock by expiry. They just have a right only, but they are not obliged to buy. But for sell call, if let's say the stock is is higher than the strike price, then the seller, they are obliged to sell. And sometimes, if let's say the buyer of the call, they want to buy the stock at the strike price right away, then the seller of the call options will also need to fulfill their promise to sell the stock to the buyer of the call. So let me go into an example so that you can see clearly. So in this example, I use a house instead of a stock counter. So let's say this house is actually valued at 50,000 in January 2020. So imagine that you are a buyer and there is a seller of the house that comes to you. He say that you can premium, a booking fee of $1,000 to have the right to buy the house at 55,000 by March 2020. So if you are the buyer of the house, sorry, yeah, if you want to buy the house, there are two ways. So one way is that you fork out $50,000 to buy the house right away, or you can pay a booking fee of $1,000 to be able to buy the house at 55,000 in March 2020. But you do not need to buy if later on you choose not to. So scenario one, um, let's say in March 2020, the value of the house actually increased to 60,000, and you actually place a deposit of $1,000 to buy the house. So you are able to buy at 55,000, but the value of the house is already 60,000. So your return is actually 60,000 minus 55,000 minus the 1,000 premium that you pay. And I actually divide by the capital that you invested, which is the $1,000 deposit. So in return, you actually have a 400% return. But if you have bought the house in January, which means that oh yeah, this one should be 50,000 because in January it's actually 50,000 the house. So 60,000 minus 50,000 divided by 50,000. So in the end, actually the percentage of return is actually much lower than the first way, whereby you just pay a deposit. So everyone understand this? Okay. Yeah, thank you, Joe, for yeah. So it's actually 50,000 because the starting price is 50,000. So as you can see, the calculation, the 20% ROI is still much lower than the first case. So let me go to scenario two. Let's say if the house actually depreciate for some reason. In March 2020, the price of the house actually dropped to 40,000. So for the buyer of the house, as the buyer of the house, the first scenario is that you paid $1,000 deposit. And since you saw that the value of the price actually dropped and you are not interested in the house anymore, you can walk away from the deal and just losing $1,000. Although your losses is 100% $1,000. But if you have already bought a house in January and now it's house is actually 40,000, so you are actually losing. Yeah, this one is also 50,000 actually. So 40,000 minus 50,000 divided by 50,000 times 100%. So your losses is also roughly about 20%. But the 20% is actually about 10,000, which is much more than what in this case. So that is this example of how buy call can actually leverage your return, but limit your losses. So summary of the buy call, you actually have a lower risk, you have a higher return, and the maximum loss is actually the premium that you pay. So the maximum loss is actually the premium that you pay, but the maximum gain is unlimited because the value of the house can actually go to unlimited if it's suddenly they want to increase the productivity over the housing area or stuff, then the value will go exponentially. Yeah. So now I will be jumping into the sell call example. So in this case, you are the seller of the house and you want to collect a booking fee of $1,000 of $1,000, and you promise to sell the house at 55,000 by March 2020. But in this case, the most important thing is that you must own the house in the first place. And the buyer can buy at any given time between now until March 2020. So this means that you must be prepared to sell the house at any time. So in scenario one, if the house increased, the value of the house increased to 60,000 in March 2020. So if the buyer choose to buy at the end, then your opportunity loss is actually 60,000 minus 55,000 that you sell plus the premium that you pay. So you actually lose out the upside of the value of the house because you choose to sell it at 55,000. And if the buyer walk away from the deal, you are profiting the $1,000. So that's how the seller actually profits by selling by collecting a premium. So for scenario two, if let's say the house value of the house dropped to 40,000, and if the buyer for some reason they still choose to buy the house at 55,000, then you are actually profiting much more because the house value is 40,000, but you are able to sell it at 55,000. But if the buyer choose to walk away because the value of the house is actually low, so in the end you still profit $1,000. So in summary, the seller of a call actually collects income, and the main thing is that only sell when you have something to sell and you are prepared to sell it. And the maximum loss is actually your unlimited opportunity because the value of the underlying can go exponentially up. And if you sell it away early, then you lose the opportunity. But the maximum gain is the premium that you collected. So anyone all clear on this call options, buying and selling? If you are clear, then you can just type in one in the chat box. Or if you have any questions with the call options, you can fire it right away before I jump into the put options. Okay. Yep, buy call it has limited risk and unlimited reward. So actually that is why for a small capital, like if we started out with a small capital, we can actually focus mainly just on buying calls. Okay, so if there's no other questions, then I will jump to the put options. So a put options, the definition is actually the opposite of the buy options, call options. So buying a put actually gives you the right to sell the stock at a particular strike price by expiry. And if you are selling a put, you are actually promising to buy the stock at a particular strike price by expiry. So it is actually the other way around. So by buying a put, you actually want the stock price to go down to be profitable because you actually lock in the price that you want to sell, the price of the 100 shares. So let's say if you lock in the strike price of $100, if the stock goes down in this period, if let's say the stock goes down $80, but you still have the right to sell the stock at $100. So actually you are having a gain. But by selling put, you actually put a promise to buy the stock at a particular price. So for example, let's say a current stock is $100, uh, but you foresee that the stock is going up to maybe $130. So you actually put a promise that if the stock price is no matter what the stock price is, you are having a obligation to buy the stock if the buy put person choose to sell the stock to you. So let's jump into the example. So for buy put example, let's say this Tesla car is 50,000 value in January 2020. So uh, a seller comes to you and in this case you are the buyer. You are interested to buy the car. Uh, okay, so the seller actually choose to sell you insurance. So because for cars, right, you may have some times where there's accidents can happen, and then your car value will drop a lot. So that is why some people will choose to buy insurance premium to cover their losses. So in this case, you can take it as something like an insurance. So seller actually will sell you the insurance at $1,000 in order that you have the right to sell the car at 40,000, maybe by 1 year, regardless of the condition of the car. So this is something like insurance. So let's say in scenario one, the car value increased to 60,000 from 40,000, and you do not want to sell the car at 40,000. So you actually lose the premium only. But for scenario two, if let's say there's an accident that happened and the car value drops to 10,000, so the return actually, because you are able to sell the car, still sell the car at 40,000. So 40,000 minus 10,000 minus the premium that you pay, you actually have a gain in value. You actually profited from this because your car value, although it dropped, but you are able to sell it at a higher price. So, but if there is no insurance, then your losses is 40,000, which is because the original car value is 50,000 and now it dropped to 10,000. So your losses is 40,000, a lot more than if you have bought the insurance. So as a summary, buying put also have a lower risk because your risk is only the premium that you pay upfront. And you can also have a higher return. Your maximum loss is the premium paid, and maximum gain is actually the maximum protection that you get. So I now jump into the sell put example. So same case, the car is 50,000, but now you are the insurance seller. So you choose to sell your insurance at $1,000 premium to the car owner, and you tell them that you promise to buy the car at 40,000 by March 2020, regardless of the condition of the car. So this means that you must have 40,000 cash in hand in order to buy the car if, let's say, the seller wants to sell it to you. And because this is a contract, it is a promise. You are actually promising, and you must buy it. So the owner Besides that, the owner can sell the car at any given time between now until actually it should be March 2020. It's based on the contract. So that is why you need to have the 40,000 cash between now and March 2020. So for this scenario one, if the car value goes up to 60,000, the car value increase. So the car owner, normally they do not want to sell the car because their value increase actually. So they do not want to sell it at 40,000. So in this case, as a seller of the insurance, you actually gain the premium and you do not really lose anything. But for scenario number two, if the owner of the car happened to be in an accident, then the car value is dropped to 10,000. So the car owner wants to sell his car because it's worthless, but he is able to sell it to you at 40,000. So your losses is actually 39,000. But the good thing is that you own the car now. So if you are able to increase the value of the car back to maybe 50,000, then your losses will not be only 39,000. Yeah. So as a summary, the seller of the put actually collects income and only sell when you really want to own something. So in the previous example, is you only sell the premium insurance premium when you really want to own the car. So for the maximum loss, the maximum loss is actually the price you promise to pay to own something. So in that case, actually is 40,000, and the maximum gain is the premium collected. So this is the big picture of the buy call and sell put to refresh your memories. So buy call has the right to buy, and maximum gain is infinite, maximum loss is premium paid. Buy put has the right to sell, maximum gain is limited when the stock price drops to 0, and maximum loss is actually the premium paid. As for sell call, there is a promise to sell. You must have the 100 shares. But the maximum gain is your premium collected. Maximum loss is 100 shares ownership. So you will be losing the 100 shares if you are obliged to sell. As for the sell put, you actually promise to buy. So you must have enough cash to actually buy the 100 shares. Maximum gain is premium collected, and maximum loss actually is your cash to buy the 100 shares. Okay. So everyone clear?